Om Ete 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 Ete.
Uja, greetings everyone. Let's see if I can get my camera working. So we'll do a screen share. So we remain at Law of Maat 11. Last week we did life force control, sexual impulse control. If you do those things we spoke about last week, you'll have some success. Today we're going to move to relationships. And then next week we'll see how far we get with relationships today. So let's not say what we're going to do next week just as yet. So I'm going to stop share, and then we're going to go to a couple photographs, and then we're going to go to a PowerPoint. Actually, let's go to the PowerPoint first so we can see what we're more logical. Something happened to the PowerPoint. One moment, please. Uja, so we'll do the PowerPoint a little later. And to get to the PowerPoint, I will have to turn off the camera. We'll see what we do. Anyway, let's go to our photos. So here we go. All right, finally started. So this photo is taken on our last trip to Kemetic, to Egypt. And also we are actually planning another one for 2024, but some logistics and behind the scenes work need to be done before we make an official announcement. But just to let you know that all of you are welcome on that trip. But we'll make the official announcement at another time with itinerary and all of that kind of thing. so that you're just aware of them. So remember, when I suggest something, it's because something special happens. And on this trip, we were able to visit the city of Amarna, and we were able to visit this location. Amarna is the city that was created by Sage Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti. And this is the location of their palace. As you can see, much of it is, is close to the ground now, mostly because it was made out of mostly mud brick. And you can see how large it is. And who knows what happened during the Christian era, with the damages, the physical damages that were done to the physical temples. And this is the worship area. You can see where the bases of the columns are around. And what would be here would be a roof. You can see there's a walk-up area. And so here's the area that would do their worship to the Aton. And I'm bringing them up in the context of relationship for a particular reason that you'll see shortly. But this is the palace which they stayed, they lived, they worshiped. And they did this as a family. He his wife, and their daughters. You can see we went all the way around. If you look all the way around. And this place is highly guarded. We came here and you can see 1, 2, 3 armed officers, and there's a 4th military. He's actually in the army here. He's guarding this place. So when you get here, it's a whole, if you request to come here, it's a whole big production with armed guards and things like that. Because this place is very well protected. As you can see, they have barbed wire around it. So next time Sehu says, "Are you coming on our trip with us?" Keep in mind, there's something behind that. And we were able actually to go into his temple and the tomb of Akhenaten. So keeping that in mind, as we move towards this idea of relationship, let's go over to there's another view. I had it all set up and then it just went weird. So that was the palace where they stayed. Now let's plug in the PowerPoint. And see what we're going to talk about. One moment, please, while I get the PowerPoint started. It'll only take one second. Okay. Now that we've seen the palace of the king and queen, which kind of doing it in reverse order. Here is the sage Akhenaten and his wife and their children. And they are actually offering flowers to the Aton, him and her. And the children are playing sister. And over here, they're being bathed with the Aton. And these you can find in the Cairo Museum. And actually, what's happening here is that they're being inundated with the consciousness of spirit, and they're frolicking with their kids, simultaneously being inundated with spirit consciousness. So the Aton is a symbol. It's not it's a symbol of the dynamic presence of spirit. And so that's keeping this as the backdrop, as the ideal. You must see that this is an unusual kind of situation, but it's many of the Parau and the priests and priestesses had children and they had relationships, but there was some did not have children, did not have relationships. In fact, we know for sure that there were women in the priesthood of Amun that didn't have any children and didn't have any spouses or anything like that. They essentially married the temple, and they married Amun. And this, one of the most pressing issues of a human being is the relationships that they're going to get into, and meaning relationships of many types. You have relationships with your own parents, relationship with co-workers, with your spouse. And one of the important aspects of that is how you're able to, what language are you using to navigate the relationship. And what I mean by that is what communication style is. You must realize that being in a relationship with another human being, especially from the idea of the romantic relationship, is not an ideal situation for a human being to live in. In fact, the idea of the person-to-person love, romantic idea, was brought forth by the troubadours in medieval Europe. When before they were suppressed, marriage was organized by the church, Catholic. And the troubadours broke away from the imposition of relationship and developed their own romantic idea of love. And the whole idea is the love of the connection of the heart, or, the connection of the eyes, what the eyes behold, reflects the desire of the heart. And that idea of the person-to-person love from that romantic perspective is wrought with with minefields, wrought with bombs ready to explode. because what it means is that the romantic idea is based on, what the eyes see, what the troubadours had a different, they had the agape, the love of the other for the presence of the other. You love the person no matter the conditions in life, etc. As opposed to your relationships being imposed by the church. But this romantic idea of the person-to-person love had a different kind of connotation in ancient Egypt, because it wasn't a person-to-person kind of love, although there are romantic and love letters that have been found in Kemetic of people expressing their love for the other, a young man being enthralled by a beautiful young lady. But what they show is the hankering of the heart that leads to the suffering of the heart. Because if you are trying to love something romantically, you're opening up you're walking the path of a path to suffering if that's where the idea, the conception of the movement of love remains. Because what you're really trying to do, and you're not doing this consciously, you're doing this unconsciously. What you're really trying to do by getting into a relationship is that you're trying to love God. But since the mind is so deluded because of you've conscripted yourself to an individual idea of individuality. And because of that, and then you've polarized yourself to a specific gender. And so you try to fulfill yourself physically through the body of another person. So you're trying to bring the opposites together, but those opposites are coming together on the physical plane with the interplay of the organs, the sex organs. But that's happening on the physical plane, and therefore it cannot be a true union of opposites. You're trying to do a hetet slab with a physical body, and that doesn't work because you are essentially not a physical being, a sexual being. You are actually a spark of soul even in your individual notion, but the mind and the Aryu has conscripted that misapprehension of the fullness of spirit and brought it down into a physical body. And then you are trying to use your physical body to fulfill or to make unification. And that's not possible. What happens through that exercise is that you generate children. Children are born. So you're trying to unite with God, but you're bringing forth children. And if children are born, I'm not saying that that's a sin or anything bad or anything like that. What I'm saying is that that's the mechanism that's going on. And that's why you're having children and so forth. You're trying to love God essentially, but you're you're trying, but you're going about it, you know, in the most indirect way possible, like you can go about it. And you don't, on the physical plane, there are all kinds of things that can happen. You have all kinds of different cosmic forces, one of which is APEP and SED. And therefore you don't know really what kind of person you're going to get involved with. During the courting process, which again is the agape, the medieval, and the person the search for the other person, and when you're going through that process, your mind is your perception of reality is skewed because you are you know in dire need of this feeling of fulfillment, but you're doing it on the physical plane, so you don't see the red flags. And if the impulse is strong enough, someone can point out the red flags to you and you still won't see them, because the mind is clouded by the impulse to unification, trying to unite. But keep in mind that this is happening unconsciously. What's really happening is that the impulse of the soul is trying to compel you to unite with your own higher nature. But that is being projected on the physical plane. It's the impulse that's playing out on the physical plane. And the problem with that is we know from experience, we know from the Kabbalion that gender is in everything. Gender is in all planes. So if you have gender on the physical plane and you have opposites, you're going to try to unite those opposites on the physical plane. The best that can come from that, from the perspective of the individual attainment, is a child can be born from that. And then you have a child, someone to pass on your name to, then you have to rear the child, but then, and then when that happens, you've entered into another relationship. So you have this relationship with this other person. You try to unite with them, and you're trying to unite with them in many different ways. You're trying to create a good relationship, trying to have a fruitful relationship with this other person. Then you may go to dinners and date nights and things like that, you know, which is all good. And then, so you're trying to unite with them, but the best that can happen, because it's on the interplay of the physical plane, is that you bring a progeny, and then you've entered into now a second relationship. And then if it doesn't do the trick, if you need more, because what's happening also is that the RU is compelling it because there's something that you need through a relationship. You need a relationship to develop some aspect of your personality that is needed for your continued spiritual evolution. And so the goddesses are working their magic in your life to bring forth what is needed. The whole point is that to try to understand is that a relationship is a condition that is predicated on the needs of the soul. And those needs of the soul are related to the spiritual needs of the soul, the spiritual evolutionary needs of the soul. That means that your relationship is there to teach you something. There's something to be learned from it. So if one doesn't do the trick, then you go back again and you have a second one. If that doesn't do the trick, then you go back and do the third one. But if there's something that is being presented to be learned by having progeny and so forth. And in trying to create this relationship, you have to examine what is the language that you're using. Yes, we know that the romantic idea of relationship is not successful. We know that it is, with a high rate of divorce. And in ancient times, women could divorce, men could divorce, people didn't have to stay together. There is no death do us part kind of idea in ancient Egypt. And so when you're in these kinds of relationships, then you have to see that the impulse to unite with the other, if you sublimate that, then that can create the impulse to unite with the divine, which is what you're trying to do anyway. And all human beings are seeking. But if a human being creates the idea that that they're here to have children and they're just putting out the physical plane, they'll be trapped, they'll be caught, they'll reincarnate. You try to do it all over again. The point is that they'll have no higher experience than the physical nature and the lower nature of the physical. And so the principle of not having indiscriminate sex, that goes along in relationships as well. Like how many there are people that have 8, 9, 10 children. What is the purpose in that? What is trying to be accomplished? And so you can be in a relationship and have strong sexual desire. And so you can be in a relationship. You can be purely monogamous. You can be with that one person and still have strong sexual desire. And then those ladies popping out 8, 9, 10 kids. And that strong sexual desire, although you may have a tribe, you're still caught, excuse me, you're still caught on the physical plane. You're still conscripted. And in that kind of condition, it's difficult to get out of that condition. The way how the mind has been conditioned. That person has to do lots of purification and meet with lots of failure to try to compel them in another direction. So if you're in a relationship, you have children or not, you have to be looking up, like Akhenaten is doing, looking towards the atom, your spirit. If you have children, then they are, there's I won't say it's a burden, it's a different kind of mechanism that you use. You have to remain inculcated in higher spirit consciousness while taking care of the drudgery of the day-to-day life of having children and so forth, which today is different. You don't have the village situation. You have mostly children are being raised by the two parents, if not just the one parent. And you don't really have a cultural, the way how modern society is designed, it is not conducive, is not a culture that is conducive to having children. What do the parents have to do? Have to go to the work in the morning, then they have to take the kids to daycare, and then we'll drop them off at school. It's just a lot. The point being made is that if the impulse control is not there, what's going to happen is that you're going, the relationship in the misdirection of unification is going to generate more relationships. And then you have to learn how to navigate through those relationships. Relationships with your partner, relationship with your children. And the ideal, I guess the takeaway when we're talking about today is the idea of maintaining spirit consciousness throughout the rearing and of bringing up a family. Now, it's mentioned twice already, the language that is used. So you have to choose the proper language. So in other words, how do you communicate? What is the communication style? And the communication style should be of openness, of compassion, of gentleness, firmness when necessary. And your communication style should be, the best way to communicate with another person is to listen. This is the best way. And to listen and acknowledge. And the reason why is you don't want to also be ruining your your situation. It means there are some relationships that's not going to work no matter what, because the people are completely incompatible. But what I mean by this idea is that if you're in a relationship and a relationship fails and you need a relationship, you're going to find another one. And that's the Aryu that's controlling that. And then if you get into that relationship and that relationship fails, you're going to get into another one. So the relationship that you're in, you learn what needs to be learned there. If it's not a relationship where there's violence and, and if people are completely incompatible and there's arguing and fighting all the time, then, that's not conducive. But but the normal challenges that enters into a relationship, you have to face them. You have to learn how to face them. You have to develop enough courage to face them. Because the relationship is compelling you to open your heart to the other. A heart of understanding, of compassion, and true empathy. And that means effacing the ego and not always getting what you want, or not always trying to get what you want. It means reducing your ego and seeing the other and seeing the suffering of the other. When a person is yelling at you and upset with you and upset with life in general, those are periods of suffering. And so at that point, in those instances, you can generate great empathy and compassion. Your partner is actually suffering. You are not really the problem. Is that their suffering is the problem. And their suffering is connected to trying to use you to fulfill themselves. And so you should not give the idea or support the idea that you can fulfill them and make them happy. It's not going to happen. Your happiness comes from within, and what is within is one's own divine nature. When people are suffering, so your partner, when your partner is suffering, that is an opportunity for you to express, to show compassion and empathy, and bearing insult and bearing injury. Being patient and understanding. Is a relationship is trying to pull that out of you. It's trying to generate that. And so you have to stay there and work it through. And what you're really trying to work through is your own egoism and how you filter what other people say, and watching your own emotional response to the world. Or can you always be triggered? And that's why relationships are good in a way, because that person knows how to trigger you. They know just exactly what to say to get under you. And then because you're so attached, there's a reaction. But if you're practicing detachment while in the relationship, if you're practicing kak'ab, you're kak'abing all the nonsense that goes along with a relationship, then you can develop the way you're not triggered. There is a spiritual teacher, one time I learned this, and he has a partner. They've been together for a long time. They're celibate and all that. But one day she was yelling at him. She was really giving it to him. And he went on the couch. He laid on the couch and went to sleep. He left her there yelling at him, doing whatever. That's kak'abing the nonsense, the nonsense over what a relationship can bring about. And what's really happening is that the dynamism or the dynamic of the relationship is compelling. It is causing you to see where you are in your spiritual journey. You have to use it for that. So your day-to-day in the trenches, whether that relationship is with a child, is with romantic partners, with at work, with your parents, anyone that you're living, you have close association with on a daily basis, you have to think to yourself, this is the training ground. This is the trenches. This is the battle right here, right now. This is Set and Haru. Locked. You know how the hippos, they lock the big mouths together, trying to conquer each other. You're locked in a battle. It's a pitch war that's going on in your mind. And if you align with that spiritual light, that atom, consciousness of spirit, you can be at rest and at peace and at calm in a relationship. And you can be at rest, at peace, at calm. If you're not in a relationship, you're just at rest, at peace, at calm. In the relationship, even with the other person acting crazy, as long as you're not acting crazy, that's the point. And if you have another mature human being over there, then you can develop a spiritual relationship and not allow the world to pull you into the world. So it's being tactical in your spiritual life. You are in a perpetual conflict. Your ego is trying to ground you, literally keep you on the earth. And you have to know that about yourself. You have to know that you're in a war in your mind, and once you've sublimated that egoism, then you know, okay, you can just relax. You're not going to let anyone abuse you or hit you or anything like that. But you know what I mean, the day-to-day trying situations of life. The other person is acting up. It doesn't mean that you have to act up. In fact, if you don't act up, one of the feelings that you experience is a great sense of victory. And you'll go about the rest of your day smiling all day. Because you're able to hold it together because of your consciousness of spirit. Anyway, we'll talk more about this. We'll probably do a part 2 because there's another photo I want to show you. The whole idea, this is the ideal. How they're relating to each other as divinities. They're not relating to each other as human beings. And the romantic troubadour idea, you're relating to the other as a human being. And that's trouble. You're actually divinities. And so you have to look beyond the physical appearance and see the center of the heart, which is the center of love. And God is love and love is God. So you're loving God by having a partner, and that's it. But you can't be loving God and cursing God, or having negative feelings towards God, even when God is in its physical manifestation, is acting up. You have to work to get to the point where you have no negative emotions whatsoever in what's going on with the other or whatever. If they can anger you, if they can upset you, if they can cause you to feel anxiety or frustration, then you have to use the situation to remove those negative emotions, no matter what it is that the other is doing or have said or whatever. Is you have a greater purpose in life than a relationship. The purpose that you have is to meet with Atom. Okay, so we'll do a little more on this next week. And that's spiritualizing your relationships. And that brings peace of mind and peace of heart. You can live day-to-day life actually in Awad Ab, bliss and joy and true happiness. Okay, until we meet again. Do it, everyone. Precept.
You too.
Dua Hatep.
Dua.